Hello and welcome to Rodder Reviews, and before we begin with the content of this video, I wanted to address the elephant in the room and discuss some changes with this channel with the regular viewers and the Rotted Souls out there. If you're not interested in that and you just want to get straight to the reviews, I have included timestamps in the pinned top comment below. But for the rest of you may have noticed that the introduction changed, the logo changed, there's some changes, and it's more of a lateral change. It's more of leaning into the changes that have already taken place. Now, I've already described that I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot more than one video a week, and I've been trying to reconcile that, not to mention the fact that Rotted Review of the Day, it hasn't been Review of the Day for a while now. When I first started this channel, it was going to be trying to do a new review every single day, 7 days a week, and that was when I was blissfully ignorant of the work commitment that would entail. And this is a lot of work. Make no mistake, being a YouTuber is not an easy thing. And I managed to make it through for many months before I basically had to say, you know what, it's going to have to be whenever I can do it. The acronym lost its meaning, so I decided to go ahead and just lean into what the channel has become and just make it full-on spelled out Rotted Reviews. That way I don't have to worry about the ending tagline of every single one of my reviews thus far. But additionally, in the regards to doing one video a week, it is a bit, I was feeling a little bit hamstrung. I was feeling a little bit like this would be a very easy way for me to lose the grip of content, that I wouldn't be delivering enough. So I decided to change out the format, and what I'm going to be doing instead is one video a week of well, basically a video just like this one. Since my channel tends to operate on the sidelines and operate on the lesser known titles, let's just say, I decided to go ahead and, you know what, I'm going to lean into that, and I'm going to make this video of 5 mini reviews of movies that you probably have never even heard of, and you know, kind of carve out my own little niche there. I will still be doing regular reviews periodically. When I made the announcement of one video a week, it was, you know, steadily, consistently, at least one video a week, maybe 2, maybe 3. Well, this is going to be the one, and if there are going to be reviews of more major features like The Lighthouse or Color Out of Space, things like that, then they will get their own full attention review as I have time to, you know, as time permits, basically. So that's the announcement. That's the change up. The logo has changed. You know, several things have changed in embracing this new format, and I think it's time to go ahead and get on with the show. So welcome to the first episode of Rotted Reviews, 5 movies you've probably never even heard of. Movie number 1, Possession Diaries, 2019. A young girl experiences a steady progression of demonic possession after playing with a Ouija board and deciding to document it for posterity since nobody would believe her. So this movie only has 116 reviews on IMDb and only 36 watches on Letterboxd, with making it a prime candidate for a movie that most people have never heard of. So the problem with this movie, and make no mistake, this movie was just one big problem. It was not very good at all. But there were several issues in play here. I'm going to go and throw up all the scores. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And there's a lot of problems with this one. First of all, I think the big problem is the fact that we have one character in a very static location. This is entirely set in her bedroom. And so, being so character-centric, this is a movie that relies on having a quality level of acting that can carry an entire movie. And I hate to say it, but Catherine Monroe playing the character of Rebecca, it was bad. I mean, I hate to be that candid in that I like to soften things. I like to come from things on a positive attribute. But this is a film this is the big decision. Who do we cast? And I really would say that I look forward to seeing where her career goes. I look forward to seeing her get some experience and so forth. But to carry an entire movie, I don't think that she was up to the task. And I don't think that her performance carried the film at all.
It's not that simple. Everywhere I go, it follows me.
I can feel your fears. It feeds me. I want your souls.
But she certainly wasn't alone in the faults of this one. It was just bad from every single aspect of it, from the writing, all the dialogue, even the camera work. This was principally a found footage film from the perspective of her webcam. And on that note, it was just terrible because it kept breaking that. It kept, there's something to be said for a static found footage film. It makes the audience almost the passive, paralyzed participant in the film. And the problem with this film is that on its surface could be very frightening if it was used to good effect. But we kept breaking away from it. We kept breaking away from the viewpoint of the webcam and then going into disembodied third-party kind of camera mode of a normal film. And it completely broke all tension. As we're standing there from the perspective of the webcam and something creepy maybe starts happening, the director seems to want to get a better shot of it and completely breaks any sort of tension, creepiness, anything along those lines. It's just one of the most hackneyed amateur mistakes I've ever seen. If you're going to have a format, don't just commit to it, although that's an important part, but really utilize it. And this did neither. So it was just one of the things that really, really chopped this movie up for me. And then also just the fine details. So far, I mean, I was mentioning that Catherine Monroe did not have the acting chops to carry the character Rebecca, and I maintain that. But at the same time, Rebecca was a really, really piss poor character in the first place. I kept thinking to myself, days and days and days and days pass as this character is basically talking to her webcam, experiencing this possession, not believing, not letting it, nobody's believing her and so on. And it's just, and I couldn't help but think, what the fuck does she even do? What does she do for a living? Is she a student? Why doesn't she go to class? Is she, a full-time employee of somewhere? Then why doesn't she ever go to work? Why aren't we getting this character out of this room?
Well, it's not that simple.
It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and it really, it just showed that this character existed for one reason and one reason only, and that's to become steadily possessed in front of the audience's eyes. And that does not make a fully fleshed out character. It just doesn't. It doesn't really, it gives us nothing to latch onto. We're basically told that here's this pretty young blonde woman that's going to be going through these stages of possession, and for some reason we should care enough about this to latch onto the character and be scared with and for her. And you know what? Fuck it. It didn't happen. It's just a terrible movie all around. It should absolutely be avoided. Total points of 12 out of 100. Moving on. Movie number 2, Strange Events, 2017. Now, this is the one and only anthology film of this particular list, and it really reminded me of a film. Actually, my top-rated review as far as views go was for Watch If You Dare, and this really kind of reminded me of it. It was not so much cohesive, intricate, small segments that are tied together with a centralized theme, and then everything kind of falls in line with that theme and brings it all home. And Southbound is a great example of that. This was a lot less well thought out, at the very least. This was very clearly just a distributor gathering together a sequence of short films by previously unknown directors and saying, hey, can we distribute your short film as part of a compilation series? And that's all it was. There was no, any sort of cohesive theme. There was no binding storyline. There was no anything like that. It was just basically one short after another. And with 373 reviews on IMDb and only 93 views on Letterboxd, I thought this would be a good candidate for this list. So some of these segments were actually pretty decent. When I was comparing this to Watch If You Dare, I think honestly, the comparisons of the format is pretty much where that ends, because that was a really, really crap movie all around, except for the first segment. But this is not a review of that. I've already done that. This is a review of this film, and this was a lot of very small segments. Some of them, got a little more drawn out than others, but some of them were as short as just a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But I would say that some of them are pretty decent, some less so. It kind of falls in this weird place of none of them were great, except for possibly one, and none of them were outright painful. And I'm talking groaning painful, and I have seen plenty of that I can identify it, and I would say that none of the shorts in this film really qualify for that. Now, the one that I was mentioning that might be considered great, I'll get to that in just a second because I want to address it. First, I'm going to go and throw up all the scores. Now, I think the main and major problem with this movie is that there is absolutely nothing contained within that can't be found in a well-cultivated YouTube playlist. That's essentially what this is somebody went out, found some good horror shorts out there, and decided to go ahead and turn it into a playlist. But then in the case of this movie, they also decided to go ahead and make some box art, get some distribution rights, package it all up on a DVD, and sell it. And that's something that I honestly think is a little bit lazy. And on that basis alone, I really can't recommend this movie. Now, what I will say is, in the vein of a well-cultivated YouTube playlist, I will say that one segment that I think achieved almost great, and is worth watching. As I was watching it, it was the second segment of this film. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, well, there's the one that I'm going to tell people is the reason to watch this movie. But in the vein of that, I decided to go ahead and do a little digging and look it up. Now, first of all, this movie does not reference any title. It basically just kind of includes it as a segment. It has a little introductory of, time and place when it was taking place. But the short that I'm talking about is named Vicious. The name Vicious does not appear anywhere in this film, but that is the name of this short that appears here. And I would recommend everybody watch it. I'm not going to say that it's great, but if you like the short of Lights Out, then I would say that this is worth giving a try. So look up on YouTube, Vicious Horror Short Film. And if you do that, there is absolutely zero reason to waste your money on Strange Events of 2017. Up next, Get Gone 2019. A group of hoaxbusters takes time to go on a team-building retreat and find themselves caught in the middle of a boiling-over feud between a drilling company and a murderous family. And so with 197 reviews on IMDb and only 34 views on Letterboxd, I will say that the reason that I picked this movie, I'm not afraid to admit, is Lynn Shay.
It is so peaceful out here. Except when the strangers show up. I sure don't understand why they want to harass my family, but they do.
I think that Lynn Shay is a damned national treasure, and I will stand by that statement till the day I die. However, I do want to say, in case you're watching this, Lynn, for some odd turn of events, I think at this point you can start saying no to some scripts.
You motherfucker!
We love you. You have the clout. You are a horror icon at this point. You can start turning some down. And this one, she absolutely should have. This was just terrible all around. This also starred Nicolas Cage's son and nephew, Weston Cage Coppola and Bailey Coppola, respectively. So it has some star power behind it. Nothing else about it worked on any level. Now, everything about the plot of this film was very poorly thought out. Poorly thought out and poorly executed. We had some of the characters of this drilling company discuss this hillbilly family out there. Now, because of fracking, The sons of this family have apparently turned into albinos, and I'm going to go ahead and show you what this movie considers to be albino makeup.
You know, my brother and I used to play in here, these parts. Can you believe that?
It looks like somebody hit him with a sack of flour. All right, so the problem with this movie is that it did have some good laugh out loud moments, but it's unclear whether I was laughing with it or at it at any given point. Sometimes the film seems delightfully self-aware in its ridiculousness, and other times it feels like it's really trying, so when I do laugh at it, I can't help but feel a little bad. But it is, at the end of the day, amateur hour hackneyed crap, and I really can't recommend it outside of potentially sitting down with your friends and riffing on it, because I think in that case there is some absolute gold contained within, but other than that, I really can't recommend this movie. Number 4, Tales from the Lodge, 2019. A group of friends meet up in a country setting to mourn the loss of one of their own. Over the course of the weekend, to honor the gallows humor aspect of their friendship, they each tell a scary story, ultimately becoming involved in a scary story of their own. Now, I mentioned Strange Events was the only anthology film of this list, and I kind of stand by that. This one follows some gray areas in here. Typically, with an anthology, like I was mentioning before, you have a binding storyline, and then it goes off and tells its stories. And to some extent, that is true of this one, except the binding storyline in this one is the principal storyline. It really does take up the bulk of the time. When we deviate from that and we go off and tell these other little miniature stories, that's all they really are very miniature stories. And it has a decent hook to it. Something kind of clever that I really did like about this is for each character telling their story, the actor playing that character directed that story. And I kind of like that. That was an interesting little take on it. But for the most part, the group of friends in the cabin, in the woods, telling you stories and interacting with one another is the movie. So I wouldn't say that it's an anthology. It's just a straight horror movie horror comedy that kind of deviates with their own little side stories here and there. It's kind of a unique premise, and it's also the most popular movie on this list with 259 reviews on IMDb and 244 views on Letterboxd, still falling within the criteria that I set for myself as far as what can make this list. Now, there are two elements of this movie that are the central reason for me wanting to plunk down and press play, and that is Mackenzie Crook and Johnny Vegas. Now, I will admit, as an American, that some of my favorite television in the world is British television. So recognizing Mackenzie Crook from the British version of The Office, as well as the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and recognizing Johnny Vegas as a frequent flyer in a lot of British panel shows like QI, as well as he had an episode of Travel Man he was in. I've already known these actors and I've already adored them. And I wanted to see Johnny Vegas especially in an actual acting performance, as opposed to just being himself on a panel show. And so what I will say is that there are some admirable aspects of this film and then some less so. But ultimately, I would say that although I did not think that this was a great movie, I will say that of this list, it is the best of the bunch. So I'm going to go and throw the scores up here, and I'm going to fully admit, I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but what I will say is there is a twist in this movie, and it's a very, very poor twist. It's one that really brought the movie down. I saw it coming a mile away, and it felt way, way too forced. And the reason that I saw it coming a mile away was because of a very abrasive conflict that I found to be honestly dragging the movie down in and of itself. But this abrasive conflict was just so frequently occurring and so vicious that at some point we go beyond And this is what happened for me. At some point, we go beyond just having something in terms of characters butting heads or some sort of abrasive conflict between characters where we have gone beyond just developing the characters. We have gone beyond having them make decisions and have dialogue that round them out and fully flesh them out for the audience, and we move beyond that and make it an actual plot element. And that's what happened here. Not only was it detestable, it made me hate all of the other characters, both in participation and in lack of participation in this conflict, but it absolutely started crossing that line into we are going beyond character development and into an actual plot element. And once that happened, for me, the twist was revealed and I saw it coming. So I really would have taken that abrasive conflicting element between these characters and really dialed it down, or at the very least used it to have the other characters stop just being passive bystanders as they allow this to happen in front of their eyeballs and actually step in and round out all the characters of the other members of the group. I honestly think that particular bit of conflict on the screenplay really should have been polished, really should have been figured out in a way that it drew less attention to itself. As it stands, would I recommend this particular movie? I would say on a lark, on a free Saturday night when you have nothing else going on and there's nothing else to watch, I would say it's worth a shot, but I would not clear your schedule for it. It's not worth that level of investment. And lastly, Pet Graveyard, 2019. Now, this movie has 741 reviews on IMDb, technically bringing it over the criteria that I set for myself as far as what these films can be included for this list of movies that most people have never heard of, which for me was no more than 500 reviews on IMDb and no more than 250 views on Letterboxd. But this only has 95 views on Letterboxd, and of those 741 reviews on IMDb, 308 of them were a full 10 stars. And this was a really shitty movie. And I can see people giving it 1 star, 2 stars. I could even see people being gracious in their heart and in a charitable move and giving it up to 5 stars. But there's no fucking way on earth that it earned 308 10-star reviews without some padding. And this is what I hate about using IMDb as a metric as far as ratings go, is because there's so much fucking padding going on that it's impossible to tell, especially for small productions like this one that aren't going to get thousands and thousands of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of ratings and reviews and so forth. If they're going to stay under the radar, then there's so much padding going on, it's impossible to tell what's good and what's bad. And this one, it's definitely not worth 10 stars. Nobody in their right mind would think that. So here's the thing. For every time we have a Jurassic World released, we also have a Triassic Planet released. Somebody always willing to copycat and get in on the franchise. And of course, we knew that Pet Sematary was getting its remake. It was very hyped up. And so of course, we're going to get a small movie rushed through production as fast as possible to get in on the bandwagon, copycat things, get themselves a nice little bit of box art, keep the title as close as possible while still being not legally liable. And we have these all the time. And I saw Pet Graveyard in my queue for a long while, and I've never bothered to watch it, but I thought, you know what, maybe it's a prime candidate for this list. So I decided to finally watch it. And it was a ripoff. But it was not at all a ripoff of Pet Sematary. So as I read the synopsis, follow along and see if you can find out which movie this is a ripoff of. A group of young adults want one more chance to say goodbye to their loved ones who have died, so they engage in brinking, being dead for no longer than 3 minutes and purposefully brought back, only something comes back with them. That's right. This is Shitty Flatliners. This is a Shitty Flatliners with a bald cat and a rip-off name to capitalize on a major motion picture release. And it screams that through and through. Nothing about this had any sort of effort behind it. It was a blatant rip-off on 2 fronts, and it was an absolute shit show of half-assedness. This is a movie where nobody in the production cared And that's what gets me, is if there is a director or a writer or actors or somebody out there that, they care, they just don't have the talent behind it, and they wind up putting out a bad movie, you know what? Tip of my hat to them. Keep plugging away. Get that talent. Get that practice under your belt. Find your voice. It'll happen. Or at the very least, I hope it happens for you. But for shit like this, where nobody cares, I cannot recommend it less. So what do I mean by nobody cares? I'm going to tell you by describing the first scene in which Brinking... Holy God, what a name. But the first scene in which Brinking goes on. Now, comparatively, in Flatliners, they put the characters in ice, they gave them an injection. When they wanted to resuscitate them, there was all sorts of complicated procedures. They did it one at a time to be safe. There was all sorts of thought put into it, care put into it, details put into it. In this one, they sit around and they only have one person that's not Brinking. They decide to do it all as a group. So 3 of them get plastic bags put over their heads to suffocate them, and then a simple oxygen, squeezy mask thing to bring them back. So really any thought of any kind of medical detail is totally out the window here. But not only that, okay, that shows a lack of caring in the fine details of production itself. But let's go beyond production and into the editing room, because they describe that these characters can only be under for 3 minutes. And they even set egg timers, super scientific, by the way, but they even set egg timers for 3 minutes as they're going on. And I can't help but do this. I am a geek when it comes to things like real time in movies. So when a character sets an egg timer and I start noticing that there is a little bit of a stretch going on here, I went back and watched this, and I set my stopwatch. So the moment that the first egg timer is set, it's supposed to ring at 3 minutes, and I timed it. And I didn't even include the segments where the character is under and in the otherworldly afterlife thing walking around. I only timed the moments in which characters are talking to each other in the real world as the egg timer is ticking down, and we can hear it ticking down. 6 minutes of dialogue while this 3-minute egg timer is ticking down. It's the kind of thing that could have been, chopped up and given a little bit more attention to in the editing room. I'm not saying that they needed to get it down to a real-time 3 minutes, although that level of detail and attention really does speak volumes to me. I'm just saying that there's a big fuck difference between 3 minutes and 6 minutes, and around the 3.5, 4 minute mark, you start thinking to yourself, why are they talking? Shouldn't this fucking egg timer be, by now? And then, 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes. It's like, surely this thing must be ringing by now. Why are they still talking? Start reviving this person. Holy shit. Nobody cared. Nobody cared at all through any stage of this production, and the scores are going to show that right here. 14 out of 100 points, just an absolute terrible, miserable mess of a movie. The only thing surprising about it was that it was a ripoff of Flatliners and not Pet Sematary. So that should about do it for this first episode of 5 movies you've probably never heard of. I really thank you for joining me here today. It means the world to me. It really, really does. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. As a small YouTuber, it helps me out more than you can possibly imagine. Every single click does. And if you want to support me further, my Patreon and my merchandise storefront links are below. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.